from one of the cameras inside the crew cabin of Discovery. This provides a much better view of the Crystal module.
Ой, здесь вроде меньше бликует. Да, понятно.
Discovery is now 65 feet away from the space station Mir. That means we only have about 30 or so feet to go before we reach our point of closest approach. This particular picture is from Mir. And all rendezvous activities continue to go very smoothly. All orbiter systems are functioning as expected.
Сейчас мы за ваше здоровье тут по печенке ударим. Валер, ты знаешь, что мы тоже вот целый день тут толчемся, а поесть-то, в общем-то, и забыли. Да, Валер, а мы с Леной по творожку жахнули. С орешками. Ты знаешь, как пошел, гад? Ну ясно, понял. Помню ящичек, когда-то и нам присылали. Или только со стороны спины. Спину хорошо изучили, Володя. Ну, понимаешь, не хочется показывать вам. Это не спина, можно сказать, а глаза, тут все иллюминаторы. А животик, ну чего, тут черненький он.
This is Mission Control Houston. This television view from Discovery shows the Mir space station, what is believed to be the Mir space station. Moving out of the screen now at the bottom of the picture. Or no, actually about in the center of the frame, just below the center at the lower end of the picture. Again, the instrumentation and communication officer here in Mission Control believes that is the Mir station as seen from Discovery. Discovery currently about 190 nautical miles from the station and closing in at a rate of 79 nautical miles per orbit.
Shaking on your video when the jets are firing, do you see the camera moving and all oscillating?
This particular activity actually has very little activity in it for the spacewalking astronauts. This exercise requires them to remain as still as they can without performing any work or anything besides watching as the Earth rolls by to allow so that they don't generate any body heat or any extra body heat, that is. Basically, our objective here is to see how cold they get, and especially how cold their hands get when they're put in a very cold place and in a very passive position.
Had a lot of trouble actually throughout the rendezvous finding shiny bits to get reflections of. Happy, Mike?
And Columbia, Huntsville for Scott. If you haven't adjusted the 35 millimeter intervalometer yet, you could adjust that to 2 seconds. If you've already passed that step, that's no problem, and you can proceed.
Okay. We'll go to 2 seconds on the intervalometer. It's no problem. Just take a couple seconds to reset. And is sample 7 looks like a different material than the last one?
And Columbia for Scott, that should be the same type of material.
Okay, is it thicker, or is it, because it looks like it might be a little thicker?
No, it seems like it appears that way, but it should be the same thickness.
Okay, and we modified the thermocouples as you said, and we'll modify the camera settings, and it'll be a few more minutes before we're finished setting up.
Okay, copy that, Scott. That camera was something that they noticed in their last data run.
Okay, thanks.
Mission Control Houston, we are using the payload bay cameras right now to hopefully catch a glimpse of the Russian space station Mir as it performs an on-orbit burn. Though it will be difficult to pick Mir out from the stars as they pass behind us, the payload bay cameras are positioned such that they're looking straight back behind the orbiter, where the Mir is flying at about 850 nautical miles behind us.
No joy from here, Story. Hope it was a good one, though, for our friends.
Thank you, sir. We could not see it here either. We'll wait 2 or 3 more minutes till sunrise, and then at that time give you a go for KU stow.
We're at a mission lapse time of 7 days, 13 hours, and 17 minutes. This is Mission Control Houston. The Mir space station is now visible on the far left-hand side of the screen, about an inch from the bottom of this particular picture. Okay, the Mir space station is the small flashing light in the center, about an inch from
Camera Charlie on a monitor.
the left-hand side of the screen. It's slowly...
Tally ho on the camera.
It is slowly moving closer to the left-hand side and is has a very light flashing to it.
We think on the middle of the screen, way to the left-hand side. We think you can see a flashing light just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen, very faint.
Yeah, we do see something flashing visually, but we're not sure that might be...
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, we believe we were just able to spot the Mir spacecraft as it flies about at 850 nautical miles. Right now, Mir is about 850 nautical miles behind Discovery.
Mir should be above the moon as you look at it.
Okay.
Our next event on NASA television will be our video highlights for Flight Day number 8. These video highlights, which will last about 43 minutes, will begin at 1 p.m. Central Time. In the meantime, after we wait a little bit to see if we can spot the mirror once it moves into the sun, we will be stowing the KU band antenna and thus concluding the television downlink that we expect to get from the vehicle during this mission. We're at a mission lapse time of 7 days, 13 hours, and 17 minutes. This is Mission Control, Houston. The Mir space station is now visible on the far left-hand side of the screen, about an inch from the bottom of this particular picture. And there were also a number of shooting stars in that view. The camera has now moved to a point Okay, the Mir space station is the small flashing light in the center, about an inch from
Camera Charlie
the left-hand side of the screen. It's slowly
Tally ho on the camera.
it is slowly moving closer to the left-hand side and is has a very light flashing to it.
We think on the middle of the screen, way to the left-hand side.
And
We've seen a lot of meteors.
the streaks that are shooting across the screen are meteorites. In other words, shooting stars.
We think you can see a flashing light just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen, very faint.
Yeah, we do see something flashing visually, but we're not sure that might be from our own leaker.
Mir sunrise in about a minute.
Okay.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, we believe we were just able to spot the Mir spacecraft as it flies about 850 nautical miles behind Discovery. The spacecraft appeared as a very small flashing light and then moved out of the picture as the camera was being moved to try to get a different picture. The one thing that we have noticed in the flight control room is that we've seen a large number of shooting stars during this 5-minute or so period when we've been watching.
Thank you.
During this 5 or so minute period when we've been watching for Mir.
Earlier this morning, Chris Cassidy had noted an object that was floating past the station near the Station Progress 52 cargo ship. That object has been identified by Russian flight controllers as an antenna cover from the Zvezda service module. Again, what we are looking at is a antenna cover from the Zvezda service module. This was identified by the Russian flight controllers earlier this morning.
Columbia, Houston, we're with you on TDRS Z. Go ahead, Story.
Okay, is the control room on a break now?
No, Story, we're all here, and we're all ears.
Okay, I thought maybe if you're on Z, you were in a break zone. I'm ready for pre-deploy prep when you are, page 2-4. I have 2 PGSCs up and running, so I've completed step 1. Let me know when you're ready for step 2.
We copy and stand by. We'll get back to you on that.
It looks symmetrical. It's a kind of teardrop shape. So it looks like something that is streamlined for travel through atmospheres. And of course, the International Space Station is not all that high. I forget the exact height, 150 miles or something in that range. And so this is something that can travel through atmospheres with some kind of aerodynamic stability. And I can't quite tell exactly what the black dot is in the middle there, but certainly it's not reflecting the light as is the rest of the object. So it's some kind of dark part where the sunlight is just being absorbed in. But it is basically joined at that right part of the International Space Station where you actually have the docking mechanism.
Yeah.
Now, of course, people will say, well, the Soyuz module or the Soyuz escape craft is docked to the International Space Station at that point. So how could something else dock there? Well, that's a good question, but certainly it's significant that it appears to be docked at the very same place. And to my mind now, and this is speculation, of course, if it is a spacecraft and it belongs to a non-earthly civilization, the fact that it positioned itself between the Soyuz escape module and the rest of the ISS, I think, is very significant, because essentially this is the only way in an emergency the crew of the International Space Station can get out. But of course, if this is an extraterrestrial vehicle, it's basically blocking the escape hatch or the escape path. So I thought that's quite significant. And I thought the other thing that was very significant was at the end of it's just over 2 minutes, the actual live feed that was captured, it goes to blue screen. And that blue screen, basically, NASA says, well, that's when it loses signal. Well, that's one explanation. Another explanation might be if in a situation where something appears that's anomalous, NASA can cut the live feed. And that appears to be what happened. And I think that's also very significant, because to me that suggests that whatever this is, it was probably a surprise. NASA wasn't expecting it, and they certainly weren't expecting that it would be kind of recorded and would go out into the general public. And once they realized that this thing was actually showing up on the live feed, they cut the feed. But it took them just over 2 minutes to realize.
Right. Well, I wonder if this was some sort of craft that the people inside the space station were not expecting, wouldn't they have proximity alarms that would go off to let them know that there was something looks like to be over 15 feet long was parked up right next to them?
Well, I'm not quite sure how the International Space Station is set up to deal with this kind of situation.
If it is at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
their proximity sensors might not be turned on if they have them, but this is something that looks like it's touching. I mean, it's right next to it, and I'm struggling. I've been looking at this thing for an hour, and I'm struggling to come up with an explanation. I've seen a lot of these videos over the past decade, and this is the first time we actually see a thing that has a color to it. I mean, it's an object for sure. In your mind, have you ruled out any possibility that this is perhaps some sort of apparatus for a solar panel or some kind of balloon or some kind of experiment or anything else?
Well, someone did suggest that it may have been the parachute, that a malfunctioning parachute from the Soyuz escape module. Now, the problem, though, here is that if it was a parachute or something like that, because the space station is moving around so quickly, you would see some movement because a parachute would still, even though the space station is in outer space, it's still would still be some movement of the fabric, and so that would kind of rule out, because it's stationary, that would rule out a misdeployed parachute.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of any other structure that NASA may have deployed there, well, you see nothing else connecting it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else holding it in place. The robotic arm is nowhere near it. So to my mind, it's not something that's been deployed by NASA. It's just, to my mind, something that suddenly appeared there, and then NASA cut the live feed once they realized that this thing was being taped or being televised around the world.
Yeah. Well, another thing that comes to mind is that the cameras that are set up for the space station and for the space shuttle weren't just the kind of camera that you point and take a picture of a mountain. I think these things can see into the infrared. In your mind, is there any possibility that we're seeing more than perhaps someone looking at a window on the space station would see, because these cameras have an ability to see more than the human eye?
Well, this is not infrared footage. I mean, this is just visual, basically normal light being captured on camera here. Certainly, the space station has had some highly sophisticated camera equipment installed on it, and the latest was when they did the spacewalk in November, December, and they installed two new high-definition cameras for recording the Earth, and of course the infrared would be one of the light spectrums they would use for basically gathering information. But for this particular footage, it was a shot in the visual spectrum.
Yeah, well, they pick up more light for dim situations, and I'm sure they can see more than the human eye can. But yeah, no, this is well lit. This is certainly something that you could see, I would imagine. But if this was an isolated incident, you might say, okay, well, we don't know what that is. But this is something that's been going on for years and decades. That tether experiment, I know there was a significant UFO captured in that. And these things have been going on as long as they've been pointing cameras into space. In your mind, is this just yet another example of our world, our Earth, our upper atmosphere teeming with strange life?
Well, that's exactly right. A lot of the most convincing evidence of UFOs and extraterrestrial life does come from NASA itself. The live video feeds that show anomalous objects. You mentioned the tether incident. There was the STS-48 incident where it appeared that a UFO was being shot at by some facility in Australia, and you see the UFO taking evasive action. And there are even whistleblowers or people who have worked at NASA that claim that they actually witnessed on one of the live feeds while they were working at NASA not only a UFO rendezvous with the space shuttle, but also an extraterrestrial emerging from the UFO and actually interacting with the astronauts. So there and that was Clark McClelland. And that's very interesting because that is giving us another example of what appears to be a spacecraft docking or rendezvousing with a NASA facility, and basically there being some interaction. And I think looking at this particular video we have of the yellow object docked with the ISS, I would say that that's very suggestive of some kind of interaction happening on board the ISS.
Yeah, well, no, they're definitely tangled. They are definitely commingling, that is for sure. But what about the idea that this black budget part of the military-industrial complex has unlimited resources, and it is a safe bet that there is some form of military astronaut program? Could this be one of these black sort of space vehicles that maybe ran into trouble and had to do an emergency docking?
Well, I think if it was a vehicle that belonged to the secret government space program, and if it ran into trouble or had to kind of rendezvous with the International Space Station, there would have been some advance warning or some notification that, hey, we're in trouble, we're coming in. And that communication, to my mind, would have ensured that the live camera feed from the ISS was cut. But that it wasn't cut in this case suggests to me that it was some kind of surprise visit and probably didn't belong to the secret space program. That would be my guess, just because it actually was televised.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe this secret military spaceship doesn't have even the same kind of comm links or the same kind of radio that could even talk to the space station.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I know one of the things that Richard Hoagland has pointed out a few times, and as well as others, was that with all the space shuttle missions, they always went up, and there was always a kind of significant time lag before they made their rendezvous with the ISS. And the suggestion was that while in this time lag, sometimes it would take a couple of days, that in fact that was probably because that they were interacting with vehicles from the secret space program. Now, in that case, that would suggest that they probably do have relatively good communications. So, to my mind, this is probably not something that belongs to the secret space fleet, even though I think that there is such a program that exists, and it probably does interact a lot with the ISS.
Okay, hold it right there. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this and your new book about JFK. My name is Rob Simone. You're listening to Coast AM.